Hi, my name is Liz. In this episode, I want to chat about some preconceived ideas I had going into early childhood education versus when I am graduated and now working. So I've only been in the early childhood education field for 3 months. I didn't have any previous experience in a formal setting. And really, when I was going through school, it was online. So in the schooling, there was a lot of theory, some examples, but it kind of had this own preconceived idea of maybe what it was going to be like. So a big one for me is the preconceived ideas that I had was that there's going to be some sort of, not necessarily curriculum, but sort of structure to follow or targets to hit. I live in British Columbia. It's 2022 when I'm recording this, so things might have changed depending on when you view it. But at this time in British Columbia, the Ministry of Education has now taken over EC, Early Childhood Education, where before it was in Family and Services. So over the next couple of years, there's going to be a lot of changes, and there already has been, considering I think it's been transitioned over for a year or two. So it's going to be more of an educational base. So when I had this preconceived idea of what things might be like, I was thinking like, okay, there's going to be like social emotional markers that we're going to hit. Not necessarily like math and science for early childhood education, but preconceived like, okay, we're going to, if a toy gets taken away by another child from another kid, how does that kid react? Do they immediately cry? Where are those markers for those kids, and what are we working toward those goals? And I started watching YouTube videos and everything on that on early childhood education. And in the States, it looks like some states do have those markers that they really need to hit. Of course, it's then a lot more paperwork for the ECEs, and depending if they have the staff availability, if they're able to reach it. So coming into this, I kind of thought as well then if maybe they did have some sort of markers that they had to hit, then maybe they'll have some sort of curriculum of things to help support hitting those target markers. They don't. So I think there's just a lot of responsibility that's can be placed. So because there isn't any markers for ECEs to hit with the children and being able to report to, it goes both ways. It's a lot more info and a lot more reporting. You're doing a lot more paperwork. You're not being really interactive with the kids when you're observing them and filling out paperwork and stuff, but then you're also not being held accountable and kind of setting up goals for each child as well. So then it just really falls on the early childhood educator, the structure of the place, and if they don't want to do it, then there'll be different quality things happening within the early childhood education centers. So I think that's a really big one, is that every educational center, depending on their philosophy as well, they're going to have their own philosophy about the center, but how they teach and how they view things. Say if they're going to use plastic toys versus non-plastic toys, like wood toys, or is it child-led or is it teacher-instructed? There's just so many different elements. So really coming into childhood education, it's like you learn only so much within your schooling, of course, and then it's like you kind of really need a mentor or, finding different people that inspire you online to be able to continue your journey and your growth of an early childhood educator. And some educators don't, they stop kind of growing after their schooling. So they'll do maybe a course here and there to keep up with their certification, but for a lot of the part, it was just interesting to see that, it really just depends on how much effort and time and soul that they put into working and providing support for the children. And so that can be, something social emotional, but it could also be Also, things that the child are interested in, and that comes back to philosophies. I didn't realize how big philosophies are within the Childhood Education Center, and then how diverse they are. So because everything is inspired by different philosophies, people pick and choose kind of what works for them or what works for the center, and kind of hopefully cohesively come together with your coworkers to create this model that works for the center and for your children there. But again, it's a lot of prep time. It's a lot of how much are we going to dive into it. If we go, if it's child-led, then that maybe there is no curriculum. You're making up the curriculum as you go along, depending on what the children are interested in. Then you help support them in that interest. I was finding though with that, if it's child-led, then it's also like you kind of have to be on it that day, that week, because maybe next week they're on to something else. So if we go for a walk, you see some eagles, and you don't really know too much about eagles, but hey, they're everywhere around where we live, and we don't know too much about them. And so, you could do stuff on flight, you could do stuff on babies, like it's springtime or fall time. How old are they? Are they golden eagles or are they juvenile eagles? And we have bald eagles here, so there's just so many different information, and the kids are willing to be absorbed. Like, they want to know, oh, is this like a juvenile eagle or is it an adult eagle, right? And just even that prep, I'm searching for that, and in a day or two they might be on to something else, but you come back to it. So I feel like there's a little bit like you do want to be or some philosophy child-led, but then there's also where's that resource that you can pull from when they're interested in these certain topics. And of course, where I live in British Columbia, there's lots of wildlife and everything. So being able to have those a little bit of structure combined with the child-led when they're interested in it. Otherwise, I feel like you're creating that on the fly, and for me, I feel like I'm trying to catch up rather than, we have eagles, bears, fishing, salmon, those are pretty common things around here. We see mushrooms and they're growing. Mushrooms is also an interest of mine, and native plants, so I know a little bit more about them than I do say about the animals. So I already have that pre-training in that, so I can be a little bit more offering more information on the spot rather than me trying to scramble and find that information, and then hopefully when it comes up again, then I'm able to provide it. The children are very, open to it the next day or next week or whatever, but a lot of times they might have moved on, or seasons have changed and they're on to something else. So I think the preconceived idea is that the philosophy is just going to be one thing. It's really, I don't think it is. A lot of it's going to be inspired, and from what I've seen, it really just depends on the educator and how much they're going to put into it. I do wish, though, that when I was in school, that I was thinking about the environment around me and just putting together a little bit of information about things that I want to learn. I'm interested to learn as well, the wildlife, and a little bit of info and facts about it. And so then I'm able to also help educate the kids when that time has come up for that season. So my third preconceived idea, I knew that some centers didn't do circle time, but I really thought that circle time would be a big part of the ones that did have circle time, and that they would have felt stories already, and they would have like a bin of musical instruments that you could go to, and they would have like kind of, interactive phase puppets and stuff like that. And that was not the case. So most of the ECEs actually have their own circle time stuff. So felt stories, their own puppets that they're used to, maybe some musical instruments. pretty generic musical instruments like drums and stuff like that might be at the center, but they're not, say, a part of the daily or weekly or monthly routine. A lot of ECEs don't like circle time, or what they do is play music from their phone, which is okay. Personally, I find it okay for some occasions, but it's a little bit different when the kids are singing with you and just hearing your voice and playing the music instrument, or even just like, you know, clapping their hands, getting the rhythm. So it's quite interesting circle time, because I, you know, had a couple felt stories that I made at in school and a couple puppets, but I thought I'd be able to see what they had, use what they had and draw on them, and maybe, you know, expand my circle time. And it's just really individual of what the ECE has. Some of them, when I was on practicum especially, I picked up a lot of their songs, some of their stories and stuff, and was able to incorporate it into my circle time now, but there wasn't like a felt story bin. For some reason I thought there'd be like a nice felt story bin. Oh, okay, these felt stories, and then I could read them and see how the kids interacted with them. A lot of them didn't have felt stories, or they were really generic felt stories, Three Little Pigs, things like that, which are, you know, the kids love those as well, but I thought it would be a bit expanded on. And I think that's another thing. I don't have children, and so I don't know the latest song or the trendiest thing for these little kids that are in their own world. So I was drawing on things from my childhood, you know, things like Raffi and stories that, you know, made sense to me now, that are instilling values, or even just counting stories or anything like that. So making it interactive with the kids. So that's kind of what I was going on. I was like, oh, there's got to be some new latest, you know, the kids are all crazed about, but I haven't really been seeing that in the centers. Yeah, so those are the 3 preconceived ideas I guess I had even before I went into ECE to when I was in school, and thinking that, you know, I guess another little bonus one is I thought we would get a lot more behavioral training, and that is kind of a concern for me. That was definitely like, oh, this is all the behavior training we're going to get, and that was actually quite shocking. I think because there's so many cultural behaviors and so many things happening at home versus daycare versus so many dynamics, being able to, of course, you're not going to be able to combat all behavior issues, and being able to redirect it and form, you know, figure out what's going on or how to support that child. So I think with schooling, they could have brought in a lot more behavioral consultants or something, right? So different situations. I did watch a lot of podcasts and a lot of other behavior analysis, working with Early Childhood Education, and seeing what they're doing. Behaviors are a huge part of early childhood education. Could be from home behaviors. They're modeling behaviors from home, modeling behaviors from other kids. They're feeling rejected because they have a new sibling, or, you know, the family splitting up, and so trying to help navigate those behaviors. So I hope you are having a great day, and I will talk to you later. Bye!